Welcome! I am Bill, front-end developer at B3 CodeWrite, and this is
Oliver Presto, and I'm also a web developer at B3 CodeWrite.
We are here to show you Svelte, a JavaScript framework that compiles itself away in the build step, taking the work from the browser to the compile step, resulting in super tiny performant bundles, and it's a joy to use. We will build a movie app where you can search for movies using the OMDB API. And you can store the movies as favorites and browse your favorites, remove them from the list. And we'll be doing that using the Svelte REPL. Switch. There we are. Let's show the REPL first.
Yep.
So this is an online editor which you can use for getting started with Svelte component and trying out your app. It's really awesome. You have everything you need in it. You can create components. You can download it, the project that you just made, to your computer. You can fork it on GitHub. You can save it and return later. So it's just a very neat way to get started. And the app we're going to build, it looks like this.
Yep.
It'll be a simple search field. You can search for movies. You can favorite them, and you can browse your favorites and remove them from the favorite list. We've shown many things here. Sometimes they might not make sense structure-wise, but we want to show you as many features as we can in this brief time. And we don't have that much time, so we're going to jump right in. We'll get started from the Hello World example in the Svelte REPL. So this is what a Svelte component looks like. It's just looks like an HTML page. You have your script tag, you have your style tag, and then you have your markup. And you can put them in whatever order you want. And Oliver is going to show how to make a test component and how to render it. So we create a new component called test. It's going to have some Bootstrap text in it. And in the app, we simply import the component using the regular ES module import syntax. And you render it just as you would expect with a custom component. There you go. Hello, TechTalk. So we will use a bit of CSS. This is not a CSS workshop or a seminar, so we will just paste in the CSS. It doesn't alter the functionality. We will go through the Svelte parts. The CSS is available in the link description under the video. You can paste it and use it if you want. So the first thing we need, we're going to make a search app. So we want to create a search component. And in it, it will have some default, just an input field and a button to submit the search query.
There you go.
Awesome. And we still need the search component.
Exactly.
Yes. And it will be a simple wrapping div with input field and a button. And we're going to paste some code in like this, and then we just remove it. This is to save you some time, not having to watch us type everything letter by letter.
There you go.
Yes. And we render it in the app component. So we import it and render it.
A little bit too much color. There you go.
Awesome. So just like we showed you with the test component, we import it and we render it.
Yep.
So you can see there above, we have the nav component there. We're going to fill it out with some navigation later.
Oops. Sorry about that. Let's refresh the page.
Cool. So we need access to the actual value of the input field. So you do that with a value binding. You're probably familiar with it. You do it in most frameworks. However, in Svelte, it's a bit easier than maybe other frameworks. So you create a local variable using the let syntax. Nothing funky about that. And this will, and you can bind the input field to it. You use the bind keyword to bind query and a colon in between. So you use the bind and then the attribute you want to two-way bind to, and then you pass the variable that you want to bind to. So now query is linked to the value of the input field. And you don't need to use any funky states or anything. Like if you use functional components in React, you don't have to set up anything special. You create a variable and you have access to it as state, and it will update live. A cool thing is if the attribute you want to bind to has the same name as the variable, there's a neat shortcut for that. So for example, if we rename it to value, you can just use the shorthand bind value. And we can show that it's working. Yeah, you can see there it's updating live. Super fancy. So next we need to fetch the query. We're going to use the query and fetch the actual movies from OMDB. So we're going to create a handle submit function. I think it's on submit.
Oh yeah, of course that's.
And a really cool thing is when you submit a form or click a button in Framework, usually nowadays you want to prevent the default behavior. You don't want to submit the form and reload the page and everything. So you want to prevent default. You pass the event and you do prevent default. However, there's this cool thing called event modifiers. So you can just pass a pipe and then a modifier you want, in this case, prevent default. So you don't have to do that in the function. So here we can just handle what we actually want to do. So we're going to make a fetch call. Yes, we create a local variable to store the results in. And we'll make a fetch call to the OMDB API. You need to get an API key for that if you're following along, or if you want to do it later. So we get the results, we parse it to JSON, and don't forget to add the course mode there because it's a cross-browser request. And we
can show you the results.
Yeah, exactly. There's a built-in console there, so you can see what it looks like.
Query is not defined, of course, because change the name to value.
Yep.
There you go.
Cool. And just for this demo's sake, don't name your variable value if it's actually the query. Make it readable. So this is what it looks like. The OMDB will return a property called search, and it will have a list of all the movies that you want. So what we do now is we're going to render each of these. So we're going to show you the each loop. So Svelte has this templating syntax that you can use. It's very similar to handlebars or mustache if you used it before. So you use curly braces and hashtags mostly. So you loop through each movie as a movie, and in there you can do whatever you want with that movie property. And don't blame us for the uppercase variable names. That's just how OMDB returns it, and we have no say in it.
I messed up here. Just gonna fix it. There you go.
Yep, awesome. So now if we do a search, it will render the title of all the movies. Super simple to use, very easy to read. You don't have to use quirky JavaScript methods to render stuff like the map function. You can actually see what this one does a bit clearer. However, we don't want to render things just like this inline in the search component. We want to have our own component for rendering the movies. So we're going to create a component called movie list. And we actually want to render the movie list in the app component, not in the search component. So this brings us to how you pass properties between components. And it's equally simple as setting up two-way binding. So if you want to expose a property or a variable from a component to the parent component, you use the export keyword. And now you have made it accessible for other components to pass in value to it, or even two-way bind to it. So in app, from the search, we're going to create a local variable here too with the same name, movies. And we'll link that up to the search component's movies. So in the search component, or in the app component, on line 12 there, where we rendered the search component, We sync it up, saying the property we want to pass a value to, and then we pass it in using curly braces. However, in this case, just as when we did the two-way binding, if the variable name and the property name is the same, you can skip the whole assignment part and just pass the curly braces. Super awesome. Now we have binding between search. Oh, no, we don't. Because this way only works when you do one-way binding. So if you want to pass the value, you can do the shorthand with the curly braces. However, if you want to get the value back and sync it, you have to use the assignment syntax. And then we want to render the movie list. So yeah, we removed it from here. We want to add it in the app component. So we import the movie list here, and we render it under the search component.
Which is there.
Or working ninja magic with those fingers. And then we need to pass in the movie object as well to the movie list.
We can do the shorthand here and also export it.
Yes, because this time we only want to pass the value. Movie list is not going to return anything to us. So we just pass it one way. So I export it from the movie list, and we render, and now everything should work. If we search for a movie, you can see we still get the same result as before, but a bit easier to read and well structured. We, however, also want a nice, neat component for each movie. So movie list is going to render a movie component. So in here, we're going to expose a few properties that we want to render. It's going to be title, and it's going to be poster. Those are properties you get with the OwnDB result from the API request. And we'll render it here. We just do some copy pasting here.
So add the screen. 1 second, bear with me.
You're doing great. You're doing great, man.
Perfect. And also, we're going to paste a lot of HTML here, but we're going to remove some of it just because we only use the title and the poster right now.
So just the top part. Later, you can see we're going to add a link and a favorite button and a few things. But right now, it's just the year and the poster that we want to show. The way we pass this is similar to the way we pass the movies property into movie list. So what you can do is we pass each property individually by themselves. So you use title equals, and you pass in the movie.title, and it's the same thing for the poster. This is a bit tedious. So Svelte has the same thing. You might have seen it in React. You can just spread out the objects containing the properties that you want.
Just to see that it actually works.
Yep, looking good. And if you notice, at the bottom there, we have a few warnings, some orange warnings there about CSS selectors. So Svelte actually warns you when you have unused code. So if you have some CSS selectors that you're not using, it will say, hey, you're not using these. And the same thing if we go to the movie component and remove the alt tag from the image. It will also warn you about accessibility problems. So you can see here, oh, you're missing the alt tag. So you get a lot of help during the build step. So you don't have to do some linting and stuff. It just shows up as you go. And this is also, of course, in like VS Code plugins and stuff like that. It will also give you the same warnings.
I'm just going to structure this real quick. 1 second.
Oh, yeah. So in an each loop, you don't have to wrap your custom components in a div. However, we're using it here because we want to add transitions to this later in the webinar. And you can't add transitions to your custom components because Svelte doesn't know what it's going to return. And you can actually return multiple elements from one component. You don't have to restrict it as you do in, for example, React. You have to return just one element. Here you can return anything you want. So if you want transitions, wrap them in a native element.
We'll get back to that later.
Yeah, it's going to be in the end. So in the movie list, when you want to pass the properties. Oh, we already did that.
Yep.
Yeah, awesome. So you can spread the properties to pass them in if you have matching exposed property names and matching property names on the object you're passing in. And so yeah, now we can expose the other properties as well, so we don't have to write them all by themselves. So we have year, we have IMDb title. Yeah, that's it. And we can comment back some of the code here that we want to use. So you can see we have a full-fledged card display of each movie here. Make sure that the link is working. Gosh, I know you. I hope you saved.
I did save. It's working. No problem.
Ooh, thank you. Thank you. So yeah, as you can see, the favorite button component here in the middle, it's commented out. So that's going to be our next thing. We want to add a nice heart that you can click to add your movie to your favorite list. So we're going to create that component, favorite button. And it's going to have some SVG icons that we have prepared and we just paste in because we didn't want to write this by hand. I hope you understand.
Can minimize this just for now.
Yeah. And we want to render that in a regular HTML button. So as we did with the query, you just render it out using curly braces. We need to render the favorite button as well. And one thing you will see is that it will look beautiful at the first try. Here you go, do it, and you see just as expected. Now this looks like some scrambled cipher. So the reason is that Svelte just renders the pure content of the variable by default. It doesn't parse anything. It doesn't know this is HTML. It's just text. So what you can use is a thing called HTML tag, and that just tells Svelte that this is HTML that we want to render. There you go. A beautiful heart that gets a bit bigger when you hover over it. Beautiful. So we want to actually do something when we click on it. So the thing you can do in Svelte, instead of passing a callback and everything into the favorite button, you can just forward the click event. So this is a very normal thing. You want to create a button, but you also want to do something with that click outside of this component. So in Svelte, you can just do the on, just like we did the on submit. So you do on and then event name on click. And this will make anything rendering the favorite component, they can bind to that click event. So you don't need to actually pass a callback or anything to it. So in here, if you go to, we need to create a local variable here to toggle the state of the heart. It's going to be empty or full. It's going to be is favorite, and we need to export it to make it accessible as property. So if you go to movie now, we can bind to we can listen to the click event in the favorite button. And we're going to have a toggle function here where we just switch the state of is favorite.
And also a local variable here.
Yep. Something to bind to. And it's going to be false by default because you haven't added the favorites. Simple as that. And then we listen to the click event and do the toggle favorite thing. Have you done that?
No, I haven't toggled it yet. So we need to do it here. If that was what you meant.
No, in the movie, in the favorite, where you render the favorite button, have we bind up? Oh yeah, we did. Toggle favorite.
And also here, of course.
Yeah, we want to pass the variable the value of is favorite. So true if it's favorite and false if it's not. However, when we click, nothing happens, and it's because we just rendered the full heart regardless of the value. Same for favorite button, we want to conditionally render the heart, the empty or the full heart. And I know ternary operators is not always awesome. They can be used in the wrong way or the right way. In this case, it makes sense. It makes it very clear what's going on here. So render the full heart if it's a favorite, otherwise render the empty heart.
And now it's working.
Awesome. However, if you make a new search now, if you add something to favorites, let's say we add the top 2 movies to favorites, and then we search for some other awesome movies, you can see they are added as favorites as well. And this is because when you update the movies list, Svelte will not re-render everything. It will only render the parts that changed. And the heart, the is favorite state didn't change because that's not a default property from the API response. The way you can do this to force a re-render every time the movie list change, you can make a keyed each block. So in the each loop here, you can add a parenthesis and then pass in a value that you want to use for as a unique key for each item. So now we're going to use the IMDb ID there. Now if we add something to favorite and we make a new search, you can see it's not clicked in. Awesome. However, if you go back and search for Star Wars again, well, we haven't stored the state anywhere. We just toggle the button when we click it, and then it re-renders and it's gone. So we need to store our favorite somewhere. So what we'll do is, in the end, we want to be able to browse our favorites. So we create our favorite list component first. Store comes in a bit.
Spoiler alert.
Man, that was the plot twist. So we have our favorite list here. I'm just going to have some placeholder text for now. On a list, beautiful. And we want to render that in the app. And we also want to know if we are browsing the search page or if we are browsing the favorites list. There's going to be 2 different routes-ish. So right now we render both of them. We're going to create a local variable called show favorites. And it's going to decide if what part of the page we're showing.
I can move this up instead so we get more logic to it.
Yeah, and you can use regular if statements. Very simple. You can combine them with else, and then you end it with just end if.
Bear with me.
He's doing the best he can.
There you go.
Awesome. So now you can see we're not showing it. If we switch it to true, you can see it. Awesome. However, you shouldn't have to change the source code to switch between the modes. So what we want to do is to add some basic navigation. However, Svelte doesn't have an official router yet, or will it come? I don't know. Not sure. However, there are many third parties available. So for now, you have to make your own or use someone else's, but there's none out of the box. But we'll get back to this later. So yeah, we conditionally render that. We want to make some buttons, some nav buttons for this. And of course, we want to create our own beautiful nav button components for this.
Let's play some style for this one.
Yeah. And it's going to be, as you can see, yeah. Thing is, you see, okay, we styled the button in here, the regular native button element, and you think, whoa, the search button is going to be changed to. No, it's not. No, it's not. Because Svelte CSS is contained within the component you're running it in. So if you write some styling for a native element in nav button, it will stay within nav button. So you don't have to add classes to everything. That will happen in the compile step. However, sometimes you might want to make something globally available. Then you can use the :global or the global pseudo selector, as we do here in the app. Yeah. Usually you don't want to do that. In this case, we want to do that because in the REPL you don't have a CSS file that you can just import. So we use the global styles in the app component. So that's really cool. Now, you might want to be able to pass in the text to the component, not as a prop, but between the opening and closing tags, just like you do with a regular button. So the way we do this is to use the slot component. everything you pass in between the opening and closing tag of the nav button will be placed in place. That's a lot of places.
Yeah.
So
similar to children in React.
Exactly. It will be the children, and it will be rendered at the slot. You can have named slots if you want to structure what you pass in a bit more. However, in this case, we're just going to have one. You can check this up on the Svelte homepage later. For now, we only pass in one text. So now we can demonstrate this. If we go to the app component again, and we import our newly created nav buttons, and we pass in some text. It's going to be search and my favorites, I think.
Oops, not that.
Yeah, so the favorite list, the search, everything, we just use self-closing tags. In this case, we pass in some text. You can see that it's updating in the buttons. So we don't have to worry about properties and all of that. And also, we want to see which state is active. So right now, if you click a button, you can't really see if we're on the search page or if we are rendering our favorites. And it's not even working. We haven't bound the click event to anything. So we want to forward the click event from the buttons. And in the app, we want to change the state that we're browsing in here. So on the nav buttons, we listen to the click event, and we change the state of show favorites. Here, probably you should have your own named function for this, but we're just going to pass an inline function to show that you can do that. So we just set the value of show favorites in a one-liner. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. So here, still nothing. If you click the buttons now, you can see it's working. However, you can't really tell by the button which one is active or not. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass in a property to the nav button to see if it's active or not. So it's just going to be called active. And it will be based on the show favorite state. So now we have to expose this property from the nav button.
1 second.
Yes.
Yep.
It will be. Let's just make it active.
All right.
For the case of this demo. So here we want to bind. You can see at the bottom there we have the active CSS class that we have some styling for. Now, how to conditionally render classes? You use the class selector, or the class keyword, and you pass in the class name that you want to toggle, and then the variable that you want the condition for that class to be present or not. So now if you click favorites or search movies, you can see the switch back and forth. Really cool. But this is Svelte. It has shortcuts for everything. So usually you want to if you have the variable name, the same name as the class name, makes sense. You can just use the shorthand, class active, and it will work just the same. I think this is called pave the cow paths. Make it easier for people to do what you do a lot. So this is something, toggle a class back and forth is something you do very often. So why not add a shorthand for it? Make it easier. You can see this font doesn't really look that great. So what we want to do is we want to link Google font. However, we don't have access to the head element here, but we do because this is Svelte, and it adds some special Svelte elements. In this case, we're going to use Svelte head. There's also Svelte body, Svelte window, a couple of different ones. So Svelte head, anything you pass in between there will be added at the bottom of the head element in the index file.
And voila.
Boom. So much better. I thought we agreed on comics. Comic Sans. What is this?
Never a Comic Sans.
so disappointed. Yeah. However, we're still not saving our favorites anywhere. We still, even if we add them, we can't really see anything in my favorites. It's just some placeholder text. So that's not what we want. So now we get to the juicy part, the store. And if you use Redux or anything similar to it, I hope you love this part, because we do. So we're going to create a normal JavaScript file. It doesn't have any Svelte syntax in it. So Svelte provides you with two kinds of stores. So it's writable stores and readable stores. So readable stores, you just set an initial value and you read from it. And a writable, you can update the state as you go. So we import writable from the Svelte store, and we export the name of our store, favorites, and we set it to a new writable store with the default value of an empty list, because it can be a list of the movies that we add to favorites. And that's it. Yep, we created a store. 2 lines of code, almost 1 line of code. The import doesn't count. The way we use this, if we go to movie, when we click when we toggle the favorite state, we want to add this or remove it from the favorite store. So we need to import the store in the movie component. This is also cool. You don't have to pass the store around. You can just import from anywhere, because it's just one state. So if we have added something to the favorite, we want to add it. So Svelte provides you with the update function and the set function. So the set function, we just set a new value to the store, and the update function will take a callback where it provides you with the current state of the store, and you can use it to make a new value. So in this case, it's current state, and the way we do this is we want the new state to be the current state, so we spread out the current state. Yeah, for the store to update properly, we want to assign it a new array. Otherwise, if you just update an item on the array, it doesn't trigger that the object has actually changed. This is similar for many frameworks. So we create a new array, we spread out the old array in it, and at the end, we add our own new movie.
And we also want to pass the isFavorite to actually show in the favorites.
Indeed. And we might want to export that to its own variable.
The movies?
Yep.
Yep. I can do it inside instead.
Yep. Even a const. Let's be pragmatic.
Of course. 1 second.
So that's a bit more readable. Sweet. And if you want to remove it, you do the same thing. You just update, you get the current state, and then you filter out the movie with the same IMDb title as you just clicked on. And that's it. That's how you store and remove. That's how you update the store. That's it. It's 1 line of code. You don't have to write a wall of text to to add something to the store. It's very, very neat, very easy to use. We're still not rendering it though. And even, yeah, let's see it. In the favorite list, we want to import the store and render our movies. So there are several ways of reading the values from a store. However, most of the times you want to read the value of the store, and that's it. You don't want to do something else. You just want access to it. So what you do is, yeah, we import the movie list because we're going to render the same view as when you search for movies. And as a value for movies, how do we pass in the store? Well, there's a shorthand for this. You use the $sign and the store name, and that is the name for the store, and that's the value of the store. So that you just have access to it. You don't have to do any weird stuff or async things or whatever. You just use the value. There are other ways of accessing it. That's a bit more. You get some more control for subscribing to the store value and unsubscribing. However, most of the times you don't care about that. You just want the value of it, and this is how you do it. So now if we switch to my favorites, you can see we actually render our movies. There's also there's a neat way of doing this. If you go to the movie component and you can see where we add and remove a movie, even though it's very, very simple, it's still it's a bit hard to read. You have to read through the entire statement to understand what we're actually doing. So we're going to use a thing called custom store. It's really nothing new. You can just set up your own interface for the store. So usually you get subscribe and you get set and update. We can create our own interface for this. Just copy paste it.
I can copy paste it.
Whoa, found it. So it looks like this. So if we go through it from the top, you destruct the writable store. So you get the subscribe. It's needed for the auto subscribe. You get the set and the update method. So what we do is we return the interface that we want others to have access to. So subscribe is needed for the auto subscription. Then we use add for adding a movie. So you can see we just move the update thing in here, and the same thing with the remove. It does exactly the same thing, but with a much neater interface. So I go back to the movie component. Yeah, all we have to do is pass in the movie object. Much clearer at a glance what this actually does. And here we just pass in the IMDb title. And that's it. Still works the same way. Awesome. However, you can see that it still doesn't really keep the state of the heart there. It doesn't know that it should be a full heart. So in the search results, we need to make a check. So when we get the search result back, we want to see if any of the resulting movies is in our favorite list or our favorite store. So we do this with a map. We're just going to compare the list to each other. So you see here, we map through the results. And if we have some item with the same IMDb title in our favorites, we add the isFavorite true to the movie. And if not, we just return the movie as is. You don't have to set the isFavorite to false.
And there's a lot going on here, but as you can see, we just provide a value to the movie's variable on top.
Yep. Also, something that we want to do here is under query, where we create the query variable. Oh, no, never mind. Never mind that.
First, we need to import our favorites, of course.
Yeah, obviously. You can see here in the middle there where we do the map function. We use the auto subscribe again, and you can just use it as a normal array or whatever value you have stored in your store. Right now, we can't really... wait. We didn't save the state for the heart, right? Did we pass in isFavorite in the right places?
Let's see. Nope, not yet.
No, we didn't.
Do we export it?
Did we export it?
We do export
yes,
it.
We did. Did we do it in movie?
Yes, we did.
No, we didn't. Oh, yes, we did.
Does this need to be exported?
I think so. Let's hope.
Yep.
Good.
That.
So we forgot to make the isFavorite property accessible from the outside. However, right now, we don't have anything to show that we're performing a search. So right now, you just click the button, and nothing really happens until you get the result back. So we want to add something. We want to change the text and disable the button and change the button text for maybe loading while we are actually fetching something. So this is a really cool thing. You can use a thing called a reactive statement. But first, we're going to create a local Boolean for just seeing if we're performing a search or not. We're going to call search disabled because it's going to handle the disabled state of the button. And when we start a search, we'll set it to true, and we'll set it to false at the end of it. Awesome. And we can disable the button now, but we can't really see it because we don't have any styling for the for the stable state. Or you can show it if you
set it true.
Yeah,
exactly. If I search now, I can click it, but if I set it to true, search now, nothing will happen.
Yeah. What we'll do now, we want to change the text reactively based on the search disabled result. So here's a cool thing. JavaScript has this thing called labels. It's a $sign and a colon sign character, and it looks like invalid JavaScript, but it's actually not. You can create labels that you can use for like go-to loops, which you never ever do, and your browser, your IDE will probably complain about it, even though it's actually valid JavaScript. But Svelte has kind of hijacked this forgotten syntax for a reactive statement. So if you assign something in here, search button text equals, whatever value, this will update automatically anytime something in that statement updates. So when search disabled changes value, this whole statement will run again, and search button text will be updated. So now if we paste this in for the button text, you can see when we do a search now, you can see for the briefest moment, you can see that it's actually changing button text. Maybe search for something they haven't searched for. Maybe it's cached or something.
Of course.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. Yeah.
Perfect.
Clear view. Something really cool with this too, we can just show this, is you can console log values as they change. So we create a new reactive statement with a console log, and we pass in movies.
Or the query.
Or the query. You can see every time we change it, it logs it out. This is a dream come true for many developers to actually see when a value changes and what it is. I think that's it for all our functionality. So now we want to add those transitions we talked about at the beginning for the movies. So you can see we wrap the movie in a div with movie container. What we want to do is we want to add some slick animation. We just pop the movies in one by one. Svelte has also, again, this is a very usual thing. You want to add some transitions. So it has some built-in transitions that you can use. No dot/slash in the beginning.
Of course.
So it has a couple of out-of-the-box transitions, and you can also create your own custom transitions. We'll not go through this here, but they have very good examples on their documentation page. So we're going to add a fly here. So fly the components in, and you can pass some properties to it. The reason we use in fly is you can actually add different animations for when the element renders and when it unrenders, when it's removed from the DOM. So here we want to use the fly animation for when you render the items.
We can also mention this, that you see that's double curve braces. That's because we just pass in an object, so it's nothing weird about it, even if it looks weird.
Yeah, you can just store that in a variable too if you want it. So now if you find something, you can see all of it just chunks in one big chunk. It's working, but that's not what we wanted. We wanted each movie to pop in individually. So the way we do that is we can use the index here, which you access by a comma after the variable name. And we can create a delay based on that index. So for every item, we add 150 millisecond delay. And I see pop, 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 just like we wanted. Super easy. We also want the movies to fade out when we do a new search or go to favorites. We use the built-in fade. And for this, we don't really want to do any delay for them. However, we want the fade to happen during 150 milliseconds.
Exactly. And for that, we also want to add one more to the index, so it doesn't times up with a 0.
Yeah, so when you fade out, it waits for the fade out to complete before the first one starts popping in from the bottom.
Now let's see.
Search. Awesome. Ace. You can see the fade out there, and then they come back. Really nice.
We can also change the Y to an X coming from the side.
Boom.
Or minus, of course.
and it's that easy to use. So that's what we had. We covered a lot of Svelte features today. There are many more that we haven't really talked about, but it's super easy to use. You have this REPL, you can just jump in, you don't have to download anything, you just start coding. They have really awesome tutorial pages that you can check out and then find out even more features. Consider this for your next projects. It's actual contender. Svelte is going to gain a lot of more presence and traction lately. You can see it popping up every here and there. There are great talks on it by its creators, Rich Harris on YouTube. And what we show now is just the front-end part. However, Svelte is coming out with a thing called, well, for the moment, it's called Svelte Kit. And it's going to be, what they call it, serverless framework.
Yeah,
serverless first.
With built-in server-side rendering.
Yeah, built-in server-side rendering. Like, it's magic. When you update a component, you don't re-render the whole app. You keep the state that you have and just re-render the parts that you updated. It builds in milliseconds. It's amazing. It looks unreal. So check that out.
And also, you can mention they used to have or do have Zapper, but Zapper is like the wrapper.
It's like Next for React, but for Svelte.
Exactly. So you can wrap it with backend code as well for Node. But they're going to mash that into Svelte. So that's why they're going to create SvelteKit. So Zapper do have routing, which probably will be built into the new Svelte.
Yeah. It's still available. It's not 1.0. Probably never will be, but it works. You can use it in projects.
I have.
There you
Live.
go. I think that's it for us.
Yeah, I think so too.
Thank you so much for checking in. And yeah, questions?
Yes, we have a couple of them.
Really?
Perfect.
Wow. Can we see them?
Is it? Oh, yeah, there it is.
Oh, it's a fancy. Yes, we actually did use arrow functions. If you check in our
It's
nav
right?
buttons, we actually used inline arrow functions.
Oh, yeah,
yes.
we don't. Yeah, exactly. You probably show the code. Perfect.
Yeah, and
Nice.
we also in the movie component where we toggle favorites, we use a normal function. You can just as well create a const
Yeah, exactly.
and use an arrow function there as well. I haven't really understood why people do that when you can just use normal functions. I mean, sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it doesn't. Yeah,
That works.
Great. Another question.
yeah.
Is this getting displayed on the screen for everyone? Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, perfect. You don't
Yeah.
need to read questions.
Serious uses. What does that mean? But
We only use a two-way binding for one thing actually, which is
The
over
movie.
here for the search. Yeah, exactly.
and for the movies.
And for the movies.
Oh yeah, that's it. And for the query.
Oh yeah, of course.
It's better to use one-way bindings like in React. I mean, you choose the one that's best. If you're not going to use two-way binding, don't just wasting performance. Probably not that much because Svelte is crazy performant. It outperforms every other thing in every benchmark. So you probably won't notice it, but yeah, you can choose whatever you want.
Great. Another question.
Yeah.
Perfect. Bring it on.
In the template conditionals, the thing is you probably want to use those expressions in the reactive statements. The thing we did there with the button text or the disabled thing.
Yeah, exactly. This one. Right.
And you can just as well pass in for example, the search button text if you want to use that as a conditional.
Yeah.
You can pass that in the if statement or else if statement. So
we
yeah,
can
you
probably
totally do
show that here, right? Like for the title, we can have to lower case.
Oh yeah, like that too. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So it's just JavaScript in there, and the value that's returned will be rendered.
Yeah.
Sorry if I misunderstood the question, but already got it.
Yeah.
Got your back.
I think that was meant.
Yeah, me too.
Another one.
Yep. Perfect.
So Svelte is 3.0 now, so it's very production ready. The thing that might be a quirk for some people is maybe that Zapper used for server-side rendering is not 1.0 and probably never will be because they will use SvelteKit instead.
Yeah. Together with Snowpack.
Yeah, together with Snowpack. Should mention that they have a tight collaboration there. I'd say for a front-end app, use it. I mean, it's totally ready.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't have the same community as React. However, nothing does. And it feels like React is big because React is big. Like, there are many other frameworks like Svelte that have really awesome features. It's production ready. It's ready to go. But people don't see it because everything is blinded by the other big ones. But Svelte, totally ready. New York Times use it for all their data displays, which has the creator actually made it for that use case. So if you follow the election in the US last year, every polls and all the statistics were actually rendered using Svelte. So yeah, there are big players using Svelte today. And it's also in...
New York Times?
That's what I said.
Oh, yes, sorry about that.
But it's actually used in other stuff as well. So like these card reader things for payment, they actually use it in, I think it's Brazil. Like it's in many hundreds of thousands card reader things for the interface there. So yeah, it's in production in many places in both large and small scale.
Yeah, and it doesn't really have a good third-party library right now for like Material UI and stuff like that. But if you switch back to the code, or my view exactly, there's something called SvelteJS, which is a third party, which is it's going to be pretty similar to Material UI, and it's still being worked with, so it doesn't have like grids and stuff like that yet, but it's up and coming.
But I think it went 1.0 very recently, like just a month or two ago. So
okay, cool.
And things are happening. The community is building, and people finding Svelte usually gets very passionate because maybe they come from some other framework or library and find out that there is a more enjoyable way of working with frontend. So yeah, things are up and coming, and yeah, many things are working very smoothly out of the box. So yeah, use it.
Next question.
Yeah, brilliant.
Whew. I'm just gonna use my mind palace.
I think it's 18 or 19, right? 2018.
I'm not sure. Let's see. Yeah, no, Svelte 3 was actually released in 2019. The initial release was November 26, 2016, so 4 years ago. So it's not like a newcomer. It's been around for a bit, but 3.0 is when it actually got a lot of traction.
And you can also use TypeScript.
Yeah,
out of the box.
That was one thing that people complain about in the beginning.
That's actually a question.
Yeah, yeah, good. Yes, all of that, it has support for that.
Yeah.
And it was built using TypeScript, but it didn't have TypeScript support, which was a bit funky. But they actually added that in last fall, I think. So yeah, it's been around for a bit.
And also there is I'm not sure if a third party, but there is a Svelte prettier where you can add stuff like how you want to structure it. Like if you want script markup styling or styling script markup or however you want. So when you save, it's just going to move the markup and everything around.
Cool. I would honestly say the ease of use. It's so easy to get started with. I mean, you could see we built this app in less than an hour. There's nothing really funky going on here. We don't have to make a lot of setup. The value binding works as it should. The callbacks, very easy. Creating components, very easy. The templating language, it's very intuitive and very easy. So I would say getting started is one of the selling points. You can see the store. If you use Redux, when I've used Svelte Store, it hurts going back to other ways of handling states. And also the actual production, like everything in Svelte happens in the build step. So it's tree shaking by default. It removes everything you don't need. You don't pass Svelte framework into production because there is no Svelte in production. You just pass a very optimized JavaScript bundle. So a Svelte app might be 7 kilobytes for a hello world, while as a React app might be 120 kilobytes. And it's also more performant. It doesn't have a shadow DOM. It actually updates the DOM surgically. Some people give some critique for that, but it's been very well explained by Rich Harris why it's better. And you can see in benchmarks and all the tests that it's just super, super fast.
If you switch back to my screen, I can show you something. You can also see here in the REPL, here's the result of the web app, but you can also switch to JS output. And here you can see the unminified code of the actual app. So this app we built is 328 lines.
I think you can actually check the minified. No, you cannot.
Nope,
Never mind.
You can't. But there's some compiler options as well. But yeah, this is the minified code, unminified code for it. And it's 328 lines for everything.
Yeah.
So it's not big at all.
Yes, the last question.
That was the last one. Okay, perfect.
No.
Yeah, testing support. You can use testing library. They have, I'm not sure if it's 1.0 yet, but they have testing library for Svelte, and you can use like any stuff, regular Mocha or Jasmine or Karma for that. So you can pick the combinations you want, import testing library, and you test it pretty much the same way you use React.
Yeah.
So hard to say it out loud now when we use Svelte thing. But yeah, you can test it the same way. You import the component, you render it, you fire events and everything, and see that the results are the same. So you can't really unit test them, but you can't really unit test any components when they capsule in like this. So yeah.
And also for Storybook. Storybook has support for Svelte as well. So if you want to get started with that, it's also really easy to use.
Yeah.
For those who have used Storybook. It's like a container for small components. So you can see them in a more structured way. It's good working with UX and just testing your components for different states that's hard to reach without an error, stuff like that.
Yeah. So that was the last question. Well, we actually got questions. We were like, oh, we don't have the same time for that. There's not going to be any questions. We got lots of questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Really awesome. And also check out the Slack channel.
Yeah.
For those who
we have a Slack channel for
it.
Svelte. If you want to ask us more questions after this.
#SvelteJS, right? Yeah, exactly.